The Tower of Babel, humanity's quest to reach heaven. Imagine a time, thousands of years ago, when all of humanity spoke a single language. There was no confusion, no barriers to communication, no divisions. Together, these united people had a single goal: to build a city with a tower so tall it could reach heaven itself. But this wasn't just any construction project. What happened here was so important, so potentially dangerous, that God Himself intervened. Today, we're diving into one of the Bible's most mysterious stories, the Tower of Babel. Let's set the scene in Genesis 11 verses 1 to 9, where the story begins. After the great flood, Noah and his family repopulate the earth. As humanity spread, they still shared the same language and decided to settle in the land of Shinar, a region in ancient Mesopotamia, which many believe corresponds to modern-day Iraq. It was here, amid the vast, flat plains, that humanity decided to make a name for themselves. But what exactly was this name, and why was it so offensive to God? The purpose of the tower. The people said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city, with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves and not be scattered over the face of the whole earth." Genesis 11 verse 4. Here's where we find the core of humanity's intentions. They wanted security and recognition, a monument to human achievement, something that said, "We are united, we are powerful, and we are safe." But this wasn't only about building a tall structure. Many scholars suggest that the Tower of Babel was likely modeled after the ziggurats of ancient Mesopotamia. Ziggurats were massive, step-like temples that symbolized a sacred connection between the earth and the heavens. They were believed to be the dwelling places of gods, where heaven met earth. The people of Babel might have hoped their tower would reach the heavens and bring them closer to God or the divine realms. Why was this offensive to God? At first glance, building a tall tower might not seem inherently wrong. But a closer look at the motivations of the people reveals a deeper issue. By saying, "Let us make a name for ourselves," they were essentially placing their identity and pride above obedience to God. The phrase, "make a name," is significant. In ancient times, one's name was tied to one's legacy, authority, and worth. The builders of Babel were focused on their own renown rather than God's. Moreover, God had commanded Noah's descendants to fill the earth, Genesis 9 verse 1, encouraging them to spread out and populate the world. But by gathering together in one place and building this monumental city, humanity was actively resisting that command, seeking to stay united in defiance of God's directive. Their efforts weren't just about constructing a tower. They were an attempt to assert their independence from God. God's intervention. Seeing this, God decides to intervene. The Bible says, "The Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building." Genesis 11 verse 5. Here we get a hint of irony. Humanity, in its pride, thought it could reach heaven, but God still had to come down to observe their efforts. God's response? He decides to confuse their language, so they can no longer communicate effectively, and thus their unity dissolves. God's intervention goes beyond simply thwarting a construction project. By confusing their language, He introduces diversity and forces them to spread out across the earth, fulfilling His original command to Noah. This scattering and separation laid the foundation for the different languages and cultures that define human societies today. Theological insights and symbolism. The Tower of Babel holds a significant theological message. First, it speaks to the dangers of pride and human arrogance. The people of Babel weren't just trying to build a tall building. They were trying to place themselves on equal footing with God. This was a direct act of defiance. reflecting humanity's tendency to rely on its own achievements rather than on divine guidance. The story also emphasizes the importance of obedience. God's command to fill the earth was clear, yet humanity tried to resist. By scattering the people and confusing their language, God reaffirmed that his purposes would ultimately prevail, even when humanity attempted to defy them. Finally, the story reveals a pattern we see repeated throughout the Bible. When humanity strays too far, God steps in to redirect them, often in surprising and transformative ways. Was the Tower of Babel literal or metaphorical? Some interpret the Tower of Babel as a literal historical event, believing that a real tower was constructed and God physically altered humanity's language. Others view it as metaphorical, a way to explain the origins of different languages and cultures, while also teaching theological lessons about humility, obedience, and dependence on God. Ancient Mesopotamian cultures constructed massive ziggurats that were viewed as bridges to the divine. The concept of the Tower of Babel as a ziggurat reflects humanity's age-old desire to access the divine realm on its own terms. The Bible uses this imagery to illustrate the futility of trying to reach God without his guidance. Ancient context and cultural insights. In ancient Mesopotamia, temples were central to city life. These temples were often built as ziggurats, tall, stepped structures that represented humanity's connection to the gods. Each level of a ziggurat was said to bring worshippers closer to the heavens. So, when the people of Babel decided to reach the heavens, they weren't simply aiming high. They were trying to create their own pathway to the divine. This resonates with Mesopotamian traditions, which valued temples and monuments as signs of divine favor and human accomplishment. In addition, Mesopotamian culture placed a strong emphasis on unity and power through centralized city-states. The people of Babel believed that if they stayed united, they would remain powerful and invulnerable. But God's intervention shattered this illusion, scattering them and diversifying human society. It's a powerful reminder that unity and strength, without obedience to God, ultimately fall apart. Modern reflections. The spirit of Babel today. The Tower of Babel story has relevance for today's world, especially in an era where humanity is again attempting to reach the heavens through technological advancement and global unity. Our society's progress in science, space exploration, and artificial intelligence echoes the ambitions of Babel. As humans seek to overcome natural limitations, we are reminded of the dangers of self-reliance and pride. The drive to centralize power and authority, and to control our own destiny without regard for the divine, can lead to a modern Tower of Babel. The lesson of Babel encourages humility and an awareness that, despite our achievements, we are ultimately dependent on forces greater than ourselves. Symbolism of language and unity. God's choice to confuse language is also profound. Language is a powerful tool that can unite or divide people. In Babel, it was the force of division that scattered humanity. However, in the New Testament, on the day of Pentecost, we see a reversal of Babel's division. People from different nations hear the apostles speak in their own languages, symbolizing a new kind of unity under God's Spirit. This connection between Babel and Pentecost highlights a beautiful biblical theme. While human pride brings division, divine grace brings unity. The story of the Tower of Babel challenges us to consider our motivations, pride, and dependence on God. It invites us to reflect on how we balance progress with humility. Are we building our own towers, seeking recognition and security apart from God? Or are we aligning our goals with His purpose? As we end this journey, let's remember that the story of Babel is more than a tale of an ancient construction project. It's a timeless reminder that human pride, unchecked, can lead to division and downfall. Yet, God's purpose prevails, urging us to look beyond ourselves and trust in His guidance. In our quest to reach the heavens, may we remember that true greatness is found not in how high we build, but in how faithfully we follow.